For the first time in our brand new Civil Rights Report, we did see, for the first time, a decline in the total number of cases, specifically a 23% decline. But while we see that this is encouraging, we need to keep in mind that if we're looking at the data from 1995 to today, it's still 3 times more than the years following the 9/11 attacks, the number of complaints that we receive. The FBI, for example, publishes a hate crime statistic every year, and we have seen that even since 9/11, hate crimes in the United States against Muslims spiked immediately after 9/11 and are still an upward trend in this country. Islamophobia and anti-Muslim incidences are still well and alive in America today. Islamophobia is institutionalized, Islamophobia is instrumentalized, and Islamophobia is internalized. Now, some of these examples in which we see Islamophobia being institutionalized are the Patriot Act shortly after 9/11, the CVE program by the Obama administration that almost exclusively targeted Muslims through false Islamophobic perceptions, as well as the Muslim ban by the Trump administration right when he took office until it was repealed by the current Biden administration. Islamophobia is used by politicians and anti-Muslim activists, think tanks, and the media always to push an agenda. And the classic example that we see is that Trump would say things like Islam hates us during the early days of his presidential campaign in 2015 as a strategy to divide the country and win the presidency. There was a new poll that was done by the Institute of Social Policy and Understanding. And in this new poll, it was shown that Muslims are the most likely faith group in the United States to internalize shame. Muslims internalize Islamic beliefs as a result of decades and decades of negative perceptions of Muslim that was pushed through either the media or policymaking. After 9/11, we do see structural Islamophobia policies, such as TSA watch lists, which targets millions of innocent people on the basis of their religious or ethnic perception. Many of these people who find themselves on this list are innocent. We always find cases of a 70-year-old on the list, for example, because their name is very common Muslim names, such as Muhammad or Ali. They see Muslims or Islam as inherently violent. That's one of the main features that we see in the perception. They also see Muslims and Islam as backwards. And often they portray Muslims and Islam as somewhat incompatible with American values. And quite frequently, we are seeing a lot of the cases in which Muslims are accused of not being loyal citizens of the United States and therefore should be subject to suspicions. Certainly, for the longest time, we have seen the American media propagate anti-Muslim rhetoric, and that still stands true to this day. When you have a cable channel like Fox News, one of the most watched channels in the entire country, push these false and distorted Islamophobic narratives on a constant basis, it's hard to argue otherwise about its effectiveness. And American media is certainly the biggest source of information for everyday Americans about Islam and Muslim in this country. So these messages are incredibly effective in what is called the dark psychology of humanization that Muslims are subject to. This idea that Muslims are less human than everyone else. And such campaigns of deshumanizations often justify dangerous policies and laws, not just against Muslims, but all Americans, quite honestly. Muslims are often racialized as Arab or South Asian. And by doing so, it renders other Muslims invisible. And remember, Muslims are the most racially diverse U.S. religious group in America. So the experiences of a South Asian Muslim in America, when compared to the experiences of a Black Muslim, for example, while they both can face similar discrimination on the basis of religion, we should also acknowledge that their racial identities can subject them to different forms of systemic and interpersonal discrimination in the U.S., such as anti-Black racism. But an outcome of this racialization is that even non-Muslim communities are targeted by Islamophobia. So the first person that was murdered in a hate crime after 9/11 was a Punjabi Sikh American man, Balbir Singh Sodhi, in Arizona, who was profiled as an Arab-looking man by the shooter.